Hello everyone, Phoenix Knight here. Welcome to the channel, and welcome to Pinot with Phoenix for January 2025, or 2026, I was about to say 2025. It was another great month on the channel as 2026 gets off to a strong start in my 2001 baseball season replay. We only have a few games to talk about this month, and a lot of that is because I started my top 100 board games of all time countdown with Jester. We'll come back to that though. But let's get started with the game recap. This should be a much shorter episode of Pinot with Phoenix than the December episode was. But let's start off. I've got my glass of Pinot right here. And we'll get started off with the 2001 season replay in Payoff Pitch Baseball as Dave's Tabletop Gaming is first to join us. Now, I've been really enjoying watching this 2001 season unfold, and let's be honest, before we get set to take a look at the standings, this replay is doing a lot of crazy things. So we just finished up June in the replay. We're going to be starting the first block of July coming up tomorrow afternoon. So let's not that monitor. Let's tab over and look at the standings. We'll zoom in just a little bit here. At this point, we have had every team on the board at this point. Looking in the American League East, we see that the Tampa Bay Devil Rays are currently at the top of the American League East, leading the division by 10 games over the New York Yankees. If you would have picked that, the only way you would have picked that in July at the start of the season would be if you were lying about it. But the Yankees would make the playoffs if they started right now, as Meandering Mike now joins us here as well. The Yankees would make the playoffs because, remember, you need a winning record to make the playoffs. 500 won't get you in. And the Boston Red Sox are falling off, and then it's pretty much free fall after that. Moving to the American League Central, that one's a fairly tight race, a tight-ish race. As we see the Cleveland Indians currently leading that division at 50-28. They're up by 4 games over the White Sox. The Royals are still very much in the thick of that race. They're 2 back of the White Sox, looking up at the Indians for 6 games. The Twins and Tigers, not as relevant right now. The AL West, though, is where we're seeing basically the replay get turned on its head, as the Texas Rangers are dominating in that division. They're running away with it right now. They have the best record in baseball by a pretty fair margin, actually. Yeah, they're at 60-20 right now through 80 games. That is good for a 23-game lead over the Seattle Mariners. And, yeah, I don't think the Mariners are going to make their historic 116-win pace. Not unless they really pick up their really get on the horse at this point. In fact, the Mariners would be out of the playoffs if they started today. As, again, you need a 500 record. You need a winning record to make the playoffs. 500 won't get you there. And a losing record won't either. Moving into the National League East, the Montreal Expos historically were in last place. They were in last place historically in the National League East. Apparently, they learned how to play baseball on the channel because they currently lead the National League East by 6 games over the Florida Marlins. The Atlanta Braves were the historic division winners. They're currently looking up at the Expos by 11.5 games, but it is July. There's a lot of baseball left to play. Then we get into a pair of tight races as we look at the National League Central, where the Houston Astros are currently holding court with a record of 43-36. They only have a game lead on the Milwaukee Brewers in the division, though, as the Brewers are coming in at a record of 42-37. The Pirates are under 500, but they're next. Then we've got the Cubs, the Reds, and the Cardinals are in total free fall. The Astros and the Cardinals historically ended the 2001 season tied in the record. But the Cardinals are not relevant so far in anything going on in the National League Central. As for the National League West, this is where we've got more craziness. The Colorado Rockies currently lead the division with a record of 53-28, currently ahead of the Giants by 2 games in the National League West. The Padres are very much in the thick of that race, though only 2.5 back of the Rockies, half game back of the Giants. The Dodgers are at 42-39. They're over 500. But the Diamondbacks, who have both Randy Johnson and Curt Schilling, the historical co-World Series MVPs in 2001, They're currently 15 games under 500 and not relevant to anything going on in the National League West. So those are your standings as of the last block in July. Let's bring it back up top, and we'll get to the rest of the games here. Next up, we'll talk about Hero Realms. This was scenario 3. Actually, no, this was scenario 4 of my background campaign with the Ranger that we were going through. We ended up taking on the Charging Boar in this one, and we actually won this game fairly easily. This one is actually an easy game to pick up, especially if you've already played Star Realms before, because this is the exact same game, just with a fantasy coat of paint on it. So everything will be familiar here. You've got your various factions, your ally abilities. Like I said, all the mechanics are exactly the same. But that's it for Hero Realms. Next up, we had the Winter campaign in Arkham Horror, the card game, where we were going through the Drowned City campaign. I'm wondering what this van is doing in front of the apartment building. Anyway, the Winter campaign, we were going through the Drowned City campaign, and I ended up wrapping the campaign early because we had investigators starting to pile up trauma a little bit more than I would like. And I brought a pair of 6 sanity investigators, which is a little bit problematic in terms of not having the room with the mental trauma to stack that up. So I did have to wrap the Winter campaign early, and we're going into backup content schedule. The last game on the channel, actually, I told you the game portion would be very short, was Second Season Pro Football by Play Games. As you can probably guess, Football Simulator. Now, I did enjoy the game, but that wasn't the only reason I was playing Second Season Pro Football. The other reason I was playing Second Season Pro Football was to see how well it's going to work as a potential replay engine on the channel. But we're going to come back to that. We're going to come back to that as we talk about my goals from the year. But I do enjoy how the game plays, but let's table the football musings for the time being. Anyway, now we'll move into Mystical Munchies. For January, we were cooking out of the official Frozen cookbook, so here's how everything turned out. The appetizer was the cool as a cucumber salad with dill. I actually liked how the salad tasted. Excuse me. I didn't so much like the indigestion that came out that night. I was having problems getting to sleep. It was not a good night. And I think a lot of that was probably because of the cucumbers that touched off something in me that I thought was long since buried. So probably not making that cucumber salad ever again in the future. Next up, we had the side, Certain Certainties Red Butter Braised Potatoes. I was actually pretty happy with how these potatoes turned out, even if it was a little bit of an effort to get everything put together for those. So apparently it's a tradition in Scandinavian feasts to have something with potatoes in it. So it's a recipe I could see using again. The entree was actually the pièce de résistance for the month. I probably pronounced that wrong. The Coronation Day herb-crusted prime rib with blueberry au jus and horseradish sauce. Say that 5 times fast. This recipe was a lot of work to get into. And I did skip the horseradish sauce because I don't trust myself around horseradish, and I've heard it's actually fairly hot. So we ended up not making the horseradish sauce. I was very happy with how this one turned out. The prime rib was very good, and the gravy actually even ended up turning out. I'm not able to make gravy work very well. Must have been dropping something off. I'm still looking at that van outside my window. Anyway, gravy is usually something I have problems with, but in this case, I actually didn't have problems with the au jus sauce. So very happy with how that turned out, and that now actually makes 2 prime rib recipes that I've made on Mystical Munchies. The first one was the first Christmas episode of Mystical Munchies, where I made it was the Captain's Feast, which was roast prime rib out of the official Fallout cookbook, when I had to go back and revisit that during Mystical Munchies in 2024. Last up, we had the drink, which was today's episode of Mystical Munchies, apple cider worth melting for. I was actually happy with how this one turned out, and the game group liked it as well. So fortunately, by buying a half gallon of the apple cider, I did have enough to make another batch. So after the batch I made for me, I was able to make another batch for the game group, and they were happy with how that turned out. So that's how that all worked out. Next up, that's it for Mystical Munchies. Next up, let's go through Ask Me Anything. In case you're new to the channel, Ask Me Anything is a segment on the recap where you can leave me a question in any video for the month with an AMA tag on it. And I will normally answer it as long as you don't violate my one guideline. As far as that one guideline goes, it's more of a guideline than a hard rule. But it also asks you to use a little bit of common sense. Basically, if you don't want a question asked of you, don't ask it of me. No questions for AMA this month. And I think a lot of the AMA questions have actually kind of dropped off a little bit now that I'm streaming a bit more and I'm becoming a lot more accessible on the channel in that regard. So, probably going to still leave AMA on there, but just in case, I'll probably leave it as a segment. Speaking of segments, we are going to start a new segment on the channel, or on Pinot with Phoenix this year. As during Pinot with Phoenix, I'm going to check in on my 2026 goals, because I did set some goals for 2026, some things I wanted to do, and this will be a way to kind of help hold myself accountable for those goals. So let's tab over and I'll remind you of the list of goals that I set out for 2026. My first goal was to get all games played in my collection. Now, it's only January, and I'm in the middle of my 2001 baseball season replay, so you'll have to give me a little bit of time on that one. Once I get into the off season, I should start picking up speed on this one. Now, another goal I had was a Wednesday campaign. I do have one scheduled for later in the year, but I'll hold that close until I'm ready to talk a little bit more about that. I do have a lot of small games that would be suitable as a Wednesday campaign, so the smaller stuff. And this isn't necessarily the background campaign of Hero Realms or my background careers in my various war games like America Bomber, like the Hunters, like Hero Realms, stuff like that. This is where I want to go through a game and play a campaign all the way through. Like I mentioned, I do have something scheduled for that a little bit later this year, but I'm going to hold that close to the vest until I'm ready to talk a little bit more about that. The next goal I had for the year was to launch a wrestling federation on the channel and Face of the Mat Pro Wrestling. I think I'm going to abandon this goal because this one was depending on something I was expecting to happen at the end of 2025, where I was basically expecting real life to get in the way of my Saturday group, and that would end up falling apart on me. So far, that doesn't look like it's going to happen, so I think I am going to abandon this goal ultimately. As far as my deciding the football question in the replay library, I'm calling this one done, coming in the aftermath of my second season pro football video. And what I've decided on football is I'm going to do Glory Days, and I'm going to use Glory Days Pro Football and Momentum Football as my replay engines. Only those two, because the other three, second season, APA, and season ticket, are just going to be too long. And I kept, as I was sitting with this goal, I kept coming back to the playoffs as being the biggest problem I was going to have with making this goal work. Because the weeks serve as your easy schedule blocks, where it's like, okay, I can put 3 games per week on the board and then run the rest via a ticker. That's easy enough to do. But the playoffs, I know I'm going to want to play those every day in real time, no ticker involvement. And second season, APA, and season ticket are all just too long to make that work. So I'm calling this one done. I'm only going to use Glory Days and Momentum Football as my season replay engines. And when I do a football season, it's going to be a feature game on Saturday, feature game on Sunday, feature game on Monday, with the ticker being run on Monday for the rest of the week. This way, I've got Thursday and Friday during a football season replay that I can put other stuff on the channel. And then my last goal for the year was at most 40 games into the collection and played. I don't like the idea, well, I'm going to come back to this, but I don't like the idea of churning through games. So actually, that's going to serve as a great segue to bring it back up top, because I do have a special topic I want to talk about, and it relates to my top 100 board games of all time. Nothing I'm saying here is going to impact this year's countdown, as I will be finishing that with Jester this year. Doing this countdown yearly requires playing a lot of new games a lot of new games. The thing with that is, and I touched on this briefly in the at most 40 new games into the collection. This requires me to churn through games like crazy, and I'm not necessarily warm to that idea. And now I'll grant you, having Noble Knight a couple hours away from me is very helpful in that regard, because if there's a game I don't like, then I can pull it out of the collection and be like, okay, this is going to go to Noble Knight during my yearly run. So in that way, it's helpful. I just don't like churning through games. And I'd rather play fewer games that would really dig into them more, especially a campaign-based game where there's a story of your own to tell from it. And you guys know I joke all the time with Jester about how his game collection is going to kill him one of these days. But I respect the hell out of what he does in terms of all the new games he plays. And as I mentioned, one of my new goals for the year was to have a down year in new games coming in. I want to be a lot more picky with the games that come in on the channel. Now note, I didn't say no new games. I'm just trying to be pickier with the games that are coming in, especially if I end up going full solo, like I still expect to happen before the end of the year. Like I said, that's not going to be any kind of hostility with the game group. That's just a reflection of life getting in the way for all of us. So given all of that, I think it makes a little more sense for me to revisit my top 100 games list every other year instead of every other year. Or instead of every year. Every other year instead of every year. That's what I want to go for. Ideally, the every other year cadence will let me get a similar volume of new games to the list, so the list will churn in a similar fashion to what Jester's going for without having to revisit the list every single year and that obscene amount of games that he plays on the channel. Like I said, respect the hell out of it, but I can't do that. Especially not being mostly solo at this point and picky about the games that are coming into my collection. So let's talk about what's coming in February. Of course, the 2001 baseball season replay and payoff pitch baseball will be continuing. And Dave says he's planning to bring in a lot less new games this year as well. Okay, so good to know I'm not the only one who's thinking about trying to get less games coming in this year. So as I mentioned, the 2001 season replay will continue in payoff pitch. As for what else is coming up on the channel, I'm actually curious too, meandering Mike, about what you think on that. If you're expecting to have a lot of new games coming in, or if you want to have a down year on the new stuff coming in. Anyway, coming back to the channel, coming back to content coming up, Sundays we are going to have some of those new games coming up on the channel. We're going to start off with a new game on the channel, the first on the channel for the year, as we play 4 Against Darkness by Ganesha Games. We're also going to feature Marvel United, Bolorama by Play Games, and I'm going to be using some special rules for that one, which will probably have Keith Avalon looking at that game and wondering, what in the hell is Phoenix Knight doing to my game? And we're going to play Marvel Zombies, so we'll already be up to 3 new games on the channel. As for Wednesdays, those are going to feature 2 more blocks of my 2001 payoff pitch baseball season replay for my top 100 countdown with Jester. And then once we get clear of that, we're going to play Super Boss Monster by Brotherwise Games, and we're going to do another Obvious Mimic solo adventure for Dungeons & Dragons. As for Mystical Munchies, we're going to be heading into the Marvel comic universe along with some of our Sunday games, as we're going to be revisiting the Cooking with Deadpool cookbook. We'll be cooking out of that. We'll be making nacho average cheese sauce, Boxing Day bread, breakfast chimney, and double shot cupcake. Before we wrap this video up, Dave wants to know if I'm playing 4 Against Darkness Expanded or the original edition. Excuse me. I'm going to be playing the original edition. I did buy the PDF of the expanded edition, but I'm not sure I'm going to print it out yet. I want to see how the original plays before I print out the expanded edition. I've also got a lot of other stuff that I also bought a lot of other what's the word I want? I bought a lot of other books with that. Let's see what all I picked up with that order. Let's see. Solo RPG books, 2026. I got mostly stuff with new enemies, stuff for towns, some new adventures, new enemies, and basically a nice variety of content. So before we wrap this video up, I just got this delivery in from Amazon. So let's go ahead and crack this open and see what we've got in here. Jarred the microphone there. I've been on a little bit of a dungeon crawler kick, and I wanted to explore more dungeon crawls this game. So I picked up something called 2-Hour Dungeon Crawl by THW Role Playing and Game Design. I'm not sure what that is. And let's see, maybe I'm happy with the game. Actually, I've got a lot of good stuff to play with. So this actually looks like it's going to be a fairly straightforward system. I've got a ton of existing map books that I can use with that, so that might be something else to check out. I've been on a little bit of a dungeon crawl kick where I want to explore more dungeon crawls. And some of that is because of an audiobook series that I've just been devouring absolutely whole on Audible. That's been taking me back to my World of Warcraft days. The book series is actually called Dungeon Diving by Bruce Centaur. And it's taking me back to my World of Warcraft days and developing actually not just World of Warcraft, but Star Wars The Old Republic as well. Especially World of Warcraft, though. Just watching as the characters develop their stats, skills, all of that. It really takes me back to how I'd spend hours and hours working on professions, learning my character, all of that fun stuff. So just kind of another happy trip down memory lane for me. Anyway, so definitely want to explore some more dungeon crawls this year. As far as what's coming up on the channel, speaking of that dungeon crawl, that's where we're starting tomorrow morning with 4 Against Darkness by Ganesha Games. We will also, later in the afternoon tomorrow, we will be at Synergy Field in Cincinnati, Ohio, as we continue my 2001 season replay in Payoff Pitch Baseball, where the Pittsburgh Pirates will be playing the Cincinnati Reds in some National League Central action. On Saturday, we'll start Mystical Munchies out of the Cooking with Deadpool cookbook as we make the appetizer, Nacho Average Cheese Sauce. Thank you for watching the video. Please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Be sure to turn on notifications so you get my content. Be well, stay safe, take care of yourselves and your loved ones, and I'll be back with more videos in the future. Until then, take care everyone.